contributed to the programs, their families, those who have none to remember them, particularly Shahr Banu Khan bint Sayyid Nasir Hussain, Maulana Sayyid Kunal Hussain Raza, Agha bin Nasir Hussain, Mahjabin Ja'fari bint Hadi Ja'fari, Abdullah Hassan bin Muhammad Ishaq, Layla Begum bint Haji Hussain, Zubayda Begum bint Tayyib Qai. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. الحمد لله الرحمن الرحيم إياك صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، غريب يا مظلوم عطشان كربلاء، سيدي لم يجبك بدني عند استغاثتك أو لساني عند استنصارك، فقد أجابك قلبي وسمعي وبصري، لبيك داعي الله لبيك، لبيك يا أبا عبد الله لبيك، ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمنا من لجأ إليكم يا سادتي وموالي، يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. All together for the last of our nights in our majalis. Bismillah. Assalamu ala al-Hussain wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussain wa ala awlad al-Hussain wa ala ashab al-Hussain, خصوصا سيدي ومولاي قمر بني هاشم كفيل الهواشم. السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بإمامنا زين العابدين. May Allah extend to all of you the warmest of condolences on the martyrdom and shahada of the adornment of worshippers, the master of prostrators, Ali ibn al-Hussain, salawatullahi wa salamuhu ala. Amma ba'd. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please illuminate your hearts and bless this majlis with a very loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The life and legacy of Imam Ali ibn al-Hussain alayhi salam is one which is riddled with pandemonium, with chaos, with tragedy, left, right, and center. Naturally, when one's life and experiences is constantly bombarded with chaos and misery, this can weigh on an individual. This could make them bend. This could compromise them in many ways. There are those, the slightest of challenges shapes their entire worldview. With Imam Zayn al-Abidin, we notice that the paradigm is shifted. That no matter what tragedy, what misery, what calamity befalls him, he changes its worldview. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin didn't allow trouble to make him compromise his identity. Nor did he allow tragedy to make him waver. The reality is, no matter what he faced in life, he would then end up with the thing that was miserable changing because of him and not the other way around. We are those who are the recipients of the changes of tragedy. When we lose someone, it can affect us. When misery challenges happen, it can affect us. If you paid attention in the world today, you'll find Sayyid Ali Sistani and all of our ulama, they condemn atrocities. Why? Because these things are hurtful, they're painful. And just today a statement was released on the ongoing problems in the world. We notice very clearly, unless you're under a rock, that these calamities, he has a very beautiful line in there, that it becomes very challenging to eat and drink water if you're someone with dignity and consciousness, knowing that there are those who are deprived to such a degree. These things affect even our grand scholars. It's natural, it's normal, but it doesn't make them waver. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin is the source of this unshakable, unfathomable resistance and robust forbearance. He does so on a few stages. If you study his life, the best way to do so, and it's imperative on us as followers of the Ahlul Bayt to study their lives. We should know a thing or two about the biographies of the Imams. One of the best resources I have personally ever seen is one of the ulama by the name of Sheikh Baqir Sharif al-Qarashi. All of the biographies of the Imams have been translated into English. You can find this on alislam.org. Type Sheikh Qarashi, look up biographies of 12 Ma'sumin, 14 rather, and they're all been translated into English with the citations, with the references, and so on and so forth. It's important. If we're going to study lives and history, we ought to start here. He mentions that one of the best ways to just look at his life is in three parts. The first part is his life before the events of Karbala. The second part is his life literally during Karbala. That of itself deserves its own segment. And the last part is after the event of Karbala. Each moment in those times serves a purpose that can give you an identity of who you're talking about and the Imam that you're honoring today. Starting off, you notice that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, alayhi salam, part of the historian's work is to dispel any misconceptions or any misunderstandings. And among these starts with the year of his birth. And Imam, we notice there are two different opinions when he was born. The consensus, however, gives us a confident answer in that he was born the 38th year after Hijrah. 38th year after Hijrah means that he was alive during the Imamah of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, which teaches us that the young Imam Zayn al-Abidin was born into the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And you find Imam Ali would raise him and he would recite the adhan and the iqamah. These things can be deduced as such. So he's born the 38th year after Hijrah because Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is the shaheed on the 40th. So he spends 2 years with his grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. Beyond this, you find when he grows up in that household, he sees that the next Imam clearly is his blessed uncle al-Mujtaba, and he is subservient to that. But in our aqidah, in our theology, as Shia, we believe every one of the Imams and members of the 12 Ma'sumin, they were from the very start of their creation ordained as Imams. However, their purpose and fulfilling that role becomes publicly obvious upon the death of the previous Imam. This is to say that you could have two Imams alive in one time, but one of them is the Hujjah. I remember watching a debate between a non-Shia versus a Shia, and they're really going at it, like very much vehemently. Which, by the way, don't waste your time if you're going to debate and just scream at each other's faces. That's not a debate, that's just an argument. But in this context, one of the claims that were made is you're trying to tell me that on the day of Ghadir Khum, you Shia believe the Prophet said Ali ibn Abi Talib is now the next Imam of Ahlul Bayt, he is the Imam of the Mu'mineen, everyone should pay allegiance, give bay'ah, so on and so forth. But the Prophet's still alive. He's like, so how could you have one being the person everyone has to give bay'ah to, while the Prophet is still alive? Could you explain that? last I checked, we found many prophets, many of which they had one major prophet and one, if you will, minor prophet. Musa's a Nabi, he's a Ma'soom, but his brother Harun is right next door. And in his absence, he sets Harun to watch the affairs of the people. You can have many times where we have multiple hujjaj of Allah. I don't see why this would contradict each other. Last I checked. Likewise, the Prophet said we have a beautiful principle. This falls into the discussion of theology, aqaid. In our madhab of Ahl al-Bayt, we believe that you can have two imams, one active in the role of imamah, one not necessarily inactive, but they are obedient to the leader imam at their time. So he would say, and this is the Prophet saying, Al-Hasan wal-Hussain imaman qama aw qa'ida. That my two grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, are imams whether they're standing or sitting. One can read this literally, stand, sit, whatever they do, they're imams. But there is a deeper, comprehensive, spiritual meaning to this. That whether one is active and up in the role of imamah or is not, they're still imams. Which means what? That just because Imam al-Hasan is the imam, even to his brother Imam al-Hussein, no matter what Imam Hussein does, that's still a hujjah upon you, even though the major imam is still active. So during the life of Rasulullah, who's the imam? Rasulullah. Ali ibn Abi Talib, is his worth any less than whether he's before or after? No, it's the same thing. So whatever he says, does, acts, is still legitimate for us to have to be obedient to, whether they're standing or sitting, i.e., whether they're active in their role or not. In this case, you find Imam Zayn al-Abidin is surrounded in a house with three other imams. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And he's also imam. So there's a time period we had four alive at one time. Just in this glimpse of a moment in history. This has a major impact. During that time period, he was born to, obviously we know the father very well, but his mother comes with a unique message to give society. During the expansionism, I remember, I swear, and this is my personal own experience, visiting one of the maraji and the ulama, I was asked to deliver this question. You know, when people say asking for a friend, and so I was doing this, like if you meet that marji, ask him this question. Like, it's a pretty good question, so it's asking for you, but I'd like to know as well. So I asked the marji in what is called Islamic expansionism, when conquests happen, just after the Prophet died, right? This caliph goes there, this one dispatches men to conquer Persia, this one goes there. There was a lot of that happened. Like what? Many people may have had Islam forced to them. So how can we, at the end of the day, it did do the job to serve Islam. It spread. Khalid ibn al-Walid, he conquered Egypt and he went south of that as well. Yeah, he can conquer, but he slaughtered so many innocent people, people that didn't give recognition, people that refused, the sword. Can we say Islam spread by the sword then, in this context? Marji ad-Din says to me, Sayyid, no matter what happened in any time period, in any Islamic expansion, if it was not done under the eyes of an Imam Ma'soom, you cannot hold Islam accountable for any atrocity that happened. We would be the first to condemn any innocent lady having her right taken, anyone whose land is taken, any individual who was slaughtered because they didn't say the kalima. He's like, we are the first to condemn those. And that's why if Ahl al-Bayt, it was not done under their eyes, we also condemn. So I agree with many who might say that, listen, we don't like how Islam spread to this part of the land. This is why, because, well, the means doesn't justify the ends. They slaughtered until they controlled it. I'm the first to condemn that, because had we held on to Ahl al-Bayt, and had we made sure that they were the ones calling the shots, you would see people entering Islam out of love. By the way, there was a country that entered Islam out of love for Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and not a single drop of blood was spilled. It was one country, Yemen. Yemen, until today, mashallah, lovers of Ahl al-Bayt. How did this happen? The Prophet sends Khalid,